All right, guys, we've gotten a new update to the AEMT book, Advanced Emergency Book, 4th edition of AAOS. So that's why I'm going to be going through. Hopefully, we're going to put this into effect pretty quick, probably pretty soon. So this is chapter one. Chapter one is going to be on EMS systems. It's pretty much going to be a review of your EMT classes. What you've learned in there. So, a lot of this is you should know already, but just to go ahead and get through it. That way, if you haven't been, in a classroom setting for a while, it's kind of a refresher also. So, all right. Preparatory applies fundamental knowledge of the EMS system, the safety, well-being of AEMT, and medical, legal, and ethical issues to the provision of medical care. So in this part, we're going to review EMS systems, the history of EMS, the roles, responsibility, and professionalism of EMS personnel, what QI is, and also public safety as a all. We are starting to see a lot of research. So we're going to see the impact of EMRs, data collection, which is something we harp on all the time. Because you need to remember that what you're inputting into your digital charts is going to be seen later on down the road. Evidence-based decision making based on of history and what has happened in the past and what will continue to happen. So public health uses simple knowledge of the principles and the role of the EMS during the public health emergencies. So we work closely with a lot of agencies, a lot of different agencies you don't really realize sometimes, but public health is one of those agencies that we do work with, and we respond to a lot of public health emergencies. That's pretty much what we do. When the public calls, we come rolling in or running in, whichever way. All right, so EMS is a multidisciplinary system. So there's different types of providers, different levels of care that are composed in this system. So you've got administration, of course. You got your medical direction, which is right now in the state of North Carolina, we do operate up under a certificate, so we do have to have a medical director. But if we ever get in a bind, we can call for medical direction and see what their opinion is and how they want us to continue through. Because all patients don't fit all of our algorithms and protocols and policies that we have on hand. There's also a state medical director that we all work closely with. So quality control, things that need to be fixed later on. Something that a skill that we may need to work on. Different things like that. So roles and responsibilities of the AEMTs as healthcare professionals in what we do on an everyday basis. So EMS is a system of professionals and agencies. Okay, please remember that. We need to be professional no matter how the call that we run up on. Okay, we work together and provide pre-hospital and hospital emergency care to sick and injured people. Okay, most of our work is done pre-hospital. If you continue on, you may get into the inter-hospital transports and different things like that. But a lot of our stuff is done out in the field. And then sometimes we can't get in the hospital. We're starting to see more of EMS professionals inside the hospital. So we're beginning to get more recognition inside the hospital also. You're part of your local EMS system. You can be a part of your regional EMS system too. We get into a major MCI. We pull resources from wherever they can come from, neighboring agencies. During the hurricanes, we were pulling them from across the state. We had, and then we ended up in a national response also. So we had people coming from across the United States. So and they provide pre-hospital and hospital components required for delivery of emergency care also. We are governed by laws, DOT in each state, and typically regulated by an EMS system office, which the state of North Carolina does have. We do have a state EMS office, and you need to be, become familiar with them and how they govern. So in this course, we are going to be providing emergency medical care, except for licensed proficients must be certified EMS professional personnel or have a state license. Okay, like right now, the state of North Carolina has a certificate. I think the license sure is coming. It may take some time. So that's what's going to make us more professional, which if we are able to gain that licensure eventually, I think. But that's going to take additional training by all personnel. And it's also going to take some monetary compensation also. So licensure is a process by which states ensue applicant competency in the examination setting. So this allows the state to manage who can function as a healthcare provider. So for this textbook, if we see licensure, of course, we're going to think same thing, has an AEMT credential. Okay. So a lot of people, credential through their state and regional process, and that may be something as simple as going and taking a test, like a state test for certificate reasons. So we have EMTs out in the field. Also, we have your EMRs. You need to know the differences in what they can and can't do. And EMRs are the state licensures, or correction, the state certificates in the state of North Carolina. Okay, you have first responders that may not so much have a certificate in hand. And then you have advanced EMTs, and what we can do is for intravenous therapy and certain medications, and advanced airway procedures. And then you have paramedics that have more skills that they can do intratracheal intubations, emergency pharmacology that they can take care of, a lot of cardiac monitoring, interpreting rhythms. We can interpret certain rhythms at the advanced EMT level, but there is more rhythms at the paramedic level, and other advanced assessment emergency medical treatment skills. All right, training licensures vary by state. The 2021 National EMS Education Standards is out there. They're outlined for skills and educational standards with the 2019 practice model. And then the NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Man, it just left me. Traffic Safety Administration. I can't remember what they stand for. Is a federal administrative source for education and standard and related documents. Okay. So everything's in 2019 scope, in this version of this book also. All right, we provide emergency medical care to patients that have life-threatening condition, and then some may only require supportive care. We've seen a big mix of that, especially since COVID. And when COVID hit, a lot of people didn't want to go to the hospital, and families didn't want to go to the hospital, so they were calling the ambulance for transportation. And then we still had the trauma-related injuries. We still had the heart attacks going on. So there was a lot of stress on EMS agencies, and a lot of people think that if they ride the ambulance up to the hospital, that's a quicker way to get back into the patient care part of emergency department, and sometimes that doesn't happen either. So we treat a whole array of conditions. So we're going to do our scene size up first, gain that big picture first, that big perspective of the call, determine if it's safe for us to even go up there or not, determine if additional resources are needed in this part of your scene size up, and identify the initial approach to mitigate the emergency scene itself. And a lot of people say this starts before driving up in a window survey, but sometimes a scene size up can start with our dispatchers. They are also getting to where they can visually see what's going on the scene with the new addition of technology with the cell phones. So don't be surprised if they're able to send you electronic pictures that they are being given, which is some new technology that they're not even used to. So that may be getting into effect in some areas, and some areas it may not. So MRS operates in a wide variety of dangers that can be dangerous to EMS personnel. And so the EMS provider must ensure their personal safety, their partner safety, and then your patients and the crowd safety also. All right, your patient assessment is going to be your foundation. You need to get into a regular routine of what you are comfortable with. That way you don't miss anything. I don't care if you're with a paramedic, a critical care paramedic, flight paramedic, a doctor or nurse is on that scene, or your EMTs or EMRs or those lay people that may be on that scene. You need to assess your patient and the form that you're comfortable with. That way you don't miss anything. Okay, me being somebody with a lot of years of possible experience, I let people that come up to me and they're there on the truck itself, I let them take care of their patients how they want to, and I'm just there for support and help. Even with your partner, you should be the same way with them too. They may do things a little bit different, as long as you're both getting the same end goal. That's okay and can work together with it. Treatment can be something as simple as making sure the patient has oxygen, IV therapy and certain medications, childbirth. We get into those situations, and then emotional crisis, death, high injury, mechanism of injuries and different things like that. And then we may have that MCI that it's just crazy, and we have a lot going on at one time. So we have to make sure that we're treating all these patients to the full effect and within their particular algorithms and protocols. So packaging the patient, making sure they get to the right facility. So however you need to package them up, we're not using the backboards as much, but you may need still to use other things. And then EMS is a career, taking care of yourself, taking care of your mental health, taking care of your body also. This career can take a toll on your body. And then successfully coping with job stresses. I heard not too long ago, a lot of people talk about PTSD in the military versus PTSD in the field with EMS and fire and public safety in general. And there's a difference there. And that's something I'll let you, get yourself kind of to get familiar with and then look into. All right, requirements, licensure requirements, certification requirements do differ by state. State of North Carolina wants you to have a high school diploma. They're looking at having other requirements before then. They want you to go through a certificate program or a educational program that is guided by the state office of EMS. So immunizations and communicable diseases, and then a valid driver's license and no criminal history. So you need to make sure that you are familiar with all those requirements. So background checks, so a certification exam, and then a practical certification exam if still recognized in your state. A lot of those practical certification exams are done through your educational course with your capstone stuff. So you don't have to take those in front of state personnel as much anymore. It's done locally there at your educational institution that you're going through your program with. CPR courses are pretty much still the same throughout. Sometimes some people are not recognizing AHA anymore. So, that's something that you need to check into with whatever agency you're working with. Demonstrate the ability to meet psychological and physical criteria to perform a job. Some agencies do have a physical criteria that you have to be able to pick up a certain amount of weight and move it, different things like that. So in compliance with other local state employer provisions, such as if you work for a local hospital system, you have to comply with their hiring stuff and compliances, and then versus a local government system, or you may work for a nationwide institution. I've heard of people wanting to work with forestry, be medics with them, and you may have to be a national registry licensure there to be able to travel throughout the United States. So just make sure you're familiar with what is required of you locally. All right, state recognized EMT practical exam may be the national registry exam. That's not a bad certification to have National Registry. It was established in 1970. And it's, most of the time it's recognized throughout the United States. It's a recertification every 2 years. So you can, if you want to go, you live on the border of a state, and they pay more across the, into another state, National Registry might be your way to get reciprocity into that state and be able to work for more money. A lot of people do that in North Carolina, up around Virginia, and then some do it, towards the South Carolina border also. Our ADA protects people with disabilities from being denied access to programs and services provided by state and local governments. It prohibits employers from failing to provide full and equal employment to people with disabilities. It protects those with disabilities seeking gainful employment under their circumstances. So, field trips were introduced in the Civil War. We get a lot of our data from war type incidences as far as treatment care and trauma care is really what we get a lot, from them. Helicopter transportation came from them and how quickly it was being able to be done. So we brought that into the civilian world. So there's a lot of history and a lot of research that was, done during wars throughout the era. Modern EMS originated in 1966 with the publication of Accidental Death and Disability and Neglected Diseases of Modern Society. So Congress mandated federal changes, and the DOT published the first national standard curriculum as a guideline for EMTs in the 1970s. So next, there was the Department of Transportation and Department of Health and Human Services created funding sources for these programs. States were required to focus on EMS personnel training and the legislation and regulation of EMS personnel levels. So and then the DOT developed and published the first national standard curriculum, has guides for EMTs in the early 1970s. AAOS published their first EMT book in 1971. Through the 70s, EMS systems developed. So emergency medicine became a recognized emergency medical specialty, and fully staffed EDs became the accepted standards of care. So the DOT developed and recommended national standard curriculum for the training of paramedics and identified a part of the course to serve as training for advanced EMTs. So, you can be an EMT first, and then you get in advanced EMT and stuff, and then you can go be a paramedic, or you can stop and, you got different levels of certification on the trucks. So, but the DOT was the big component there from the federal level, and they kind of pushed it down to the state levels. So EMTs and advanced EMTs could perform several important advanced skills in the field that were formerly reserved for paramedics. And I think that's going to be ever changing even now in 2023 and going forward. So the roles and responsibilities of EMS providers began to vary from state to state. And in the 1990s, the NHTSA developed the EMS Agenda for the Future, which was a document that created a plan for standardized the levels of EMS education and providers. So in 2019, NHTSA revised the EMS Agenda for the Future and published EMS Agenda 2050 to place greater emphasis on patient-centered care. All right, licensures will vary from state to state, so please be very careful with that and make sure that you know what each state recognizes and what their level of competency is. On the federal level, the National EMS Scope of Practice Models provides overarching guidelines for the minimum skills each level EMS provider should be able to perform, and at the state level, laws regulate how EMS providers will operate. And then at the local level, your medical director can guide you through from day-to-day limits. Okay. So, one county may recognize this drug, the next county over may recognize this drug or not recognize that drug. So if you're working in multiple areas, please make sure that you understand what you can and can't do in each area. And that's going to be based off of your protocols and policies. All right, millions of lay people are trained in BLS and CPR. So we have a lot of people, teachers, coaches, babysitters daycares, it's pretty standard that somebody in most every place has probably got some type of CPR certification. So we always take that scope into early recognition and early chest compressions. AEDs are out there too, so they're available in a lot of different places. You may see one once you arrive on the scene. So don't forget about that. And be able to work with those people that have deployed those. So EMRs could be law enforcement officers, firefighters, park rangers, ski patrollers. There could be a lot of different lay people that are certified at EMRs. So be able to work with them, see what they come up with during their initial assessment, so that y'all can work hand in hand. They're trained to initiate immediate life care, provide immediate BLS and urgent care with limited equipment, and familiar with procedures, equipment, and packaging techniques with which they may be called on to assist. All right, EMT are out there. You should be familiar with their knowledge and their training, and what they can and can't do. So we need to be able to all work together to make sure that we assist that patient at the most appropriate time. All right, advanced EMTs is what you're going to be now. Courses a minimum of 200 hours, and it's the first level of the ALS scope of practice. So they can include pharmacology a little bit, some rhythm interpretation, and then IV access. And in the state of North Carolina, you're lucky enough to be able to do some advanced airway techniques also. Paramedics are 800 to 1,100 hours beyond the EMT requirements. Some maybe make you want to have an associate's degree or even a bachelor's degree program. They have a large range of ALS skills that they can do. All right, the EMS Agenda of 2050 is a multidisciplinary national review of all aspects of EMS delivery, and the goal is to develop a more cohesive and consistent system across the United States. When we've had these national responses to hurricanes and natural disasters, there was a lot of confusion when these things were going on, with people going in there into that general area, and people were not familiar with what certain groups of people could do and what certain groups of people were doing. So, I think that this is, we want to make a national standard throughout the whole United States so that we're all kind of familiar with what each other's capabilities are. We want to be evidence-based clinical care. We use a lot of times we were just doing it from the different wars, but as you can see, our patients are becoming more and more complicated. So we need to be able to do that. Efficient and rounded care, making sure that these patients are getting complete care from us, and maybe they don't need emergency departments so much. Can we treat them on scene? Can we refer them to some type of other kind of care also, maybe psychiatric care, urgent care? Maybe they can make it to in the morning and possibly get in with ortho or some kind of specialty care. So preventative care, being out there, with our geriatric patients and their falls, or pediatric patients and falls, safe driving, preventative care, and comprehensive and easily accessible patient records. The EPIC systems, starting that process, the AMS, some areas are not able to tap into that. So we want to be able to make that more accessible for everyone. The vision is safe and efficient transport, not running lots of sirens all the time. Do we really need air medical? Are we in a rural area that would help? I've met with some EMS professionals out west, and due to the traffic, they fly some patients just on a standard because of the length of transport to get them, 5 or 6 miles down the road. With traffic, it could take an hour. So care that reduces physical, emotional, and psychological suffering, focused on preventive injuries and illnesses, like we talked about on the last slide, and access to patients' comprehensive medical records. So inherently safe and effective, integrated and seamless, reliable and prepared, and socially equitable and sustainable and efficient. Okay. All right, public access begins with the 911 system. Like I said, these people will start to visually start seeing what's going on. That's going to be a new thing for telecommunicators. They are trained to give pre-hospital or pre-care instructions, such as possibly giving aspirin and nitro, starting CPR if that's valid, or talking these people through safety themselves. So they usually have access to everyone, fire law and EMS, and can communicate with all of them. So that's our central point. We do have the interoperability now, to talk to each other on another channel. So that's better, so that we don't always tie up the main channel. So just some different things to be familiar with. Additional data like address, phone number, calls, train on how the public can summon an EMS unit. Any of these systems help with HIPAA, so that we're not saying that John Doe down the streets have chest pains. So that was a big HIPAA relief, but it also gives pre-arrival instructions. It can help them possibly do a stroke screen. Maybe figure out what kind of respiratory disease they're suffering from when your respiratory call, or even psychological call. Do they have weapons, access to weapons, or do they have a weapon on the person? So all this stuff can be done through them. So look at their patients with the alley and the phases that continue to become more and more enhanced, especially with cell phones being out now. Patient may be traveling down the road, and they travel to another county that may have a closer unit. So different things like that. All right, clinical care use a wide range of equipment. It's going to be a little bit bigger than what it was at one time. So check your equipment before you go on duty, and ensure it is assigned, sentence assigned place, working properly, and you're familiar with a specific monitor. Make sure it's in date, it's been maintained, correctly, due to manufacturing specifications. A lot of times, just making sure it's back there. It's kind of embarrassing to roll up on a scene and not have a stretcher for your patient. So, you might be asked to drive on the ambulance itself. You may have a paramedic in the back, so make sure that your vehicle, you're comfortable with driving that vehicle, the controls of that vehicle. So in the units controls in the patient compartment, a lot of times on the dog box at the front, we have controls that actually help bring electricity back to the patient compartment. Even turning on the HVAC unit back there also. Making sure that vehicle is serviced correctly, has been serviced correctly. It makes all the standards that your state or agency may have put forth, so that you don't have a problem later. All right, human resources deal with talented people want to work and can turn their passion into a rewarding career. So help protect 2050 hopefully help protects the well-being of EMS providers, develops career ladders for EMS providers, and allows providers to relocate from another state more seamlessly. One of the functions of EMS scope of practice is to create stable foundations in which each level of EMS provider is grounded. So national registry certification often facilitates licensures in other states. So replica extends privilege for EMS personnel from member states to practice on a short-term or intermittent basis. All right, medical direction and control. Physicians, medical director authorizes providers to give medical care in the field, and appropriate care is described in standing orders and protocols. So a standing order, a standard protocol is something that you can, based off of where you're at, your county, your region, however your areas break down. The beach has certain standing orders and protocols that are specified to them versus us in here inland versus those out in the mountains, in the state of North Carolina. So, things may vary differently across the state. And that's going to be brought down to the local medical director. But then, we know about medicines and how they change over the years. So we become more familiar with what different medicines can do. And it may not be in our standard protocols and orders. So we may call medical control and talk them through the situation and what we can and can't do. So that would be an online control. Then offline would be whatever outstanding protocols allow us to do. Training protocols follow state legislation, rules, regulations, and guidelines. So the training program has latitude. Their training protocols and practice conform to state legislation rules. So medical directors, along with EMS supervisors and others, develop protocols for a service area. State EMS are responsible for authorizing, auditing, and regulating all those EMS systems, training institutions, courses, instructors, and providers within a state. So EMS is usually administered by an overall senior EMS official, and then daily operation and overall direction of the service is provided by an appointed chief executive officer and several other officers. So your shift supervisors, both operational logistics, there could be a lot of breakdown there depending on how big your system is. So when the EMS unit is part of a fire or police department, the department chief will usually delegate the responsibility for directing EMS to an assistant chief or other officers whose sole responsibility is to manage the EMS activities. So the chief executive is in the administrative tasks such as scheduling personnel budgets, purchasing and vehicle maintenance, and the daily operations of the ambulance and crews. Okay. So just become familiar with who does what within your system. Okay. You may have a training officer that's all they're responsible for is training, and making sure that everybody knows, what to do, how to do, and when to do it. All right, integration of health services pre-hospital care is coordinated with the care administered at the hospital. So when you deliver a patient to the ED, you're simply transferring that patient to another healthcare provider. So it helps decreases errors to increase efficiencies and most of all, ensure the patient receives comprehensive continuity of care. Okay, so we do have some EMS system. We collaborate with local hospitals or other hospitals to improve time management of heart attacks, strokes, and trauma. All right, mobile integrated healthcare is delivering healthcare that utilizes pre-hospital spectrum. It is evolved as a result of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. So it offers access to care to patients who live in communities with limited medical resources. So your CHF patients, where there may be only one doctor's office in that community, we can go out, hopefully help make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to, as far as maintenance of their disease. So, QAQI medical director maintains quality control. They audit and review calls, and all EMS calls. Okay, you may just get an audit, X amount of calls you've run, and that's coming from your PCR. So make sure that that PCR is complete. Make sure that you're getting your retraining in, your Con-Ed in like you're supposed to, because if you don't, you won't get recertified. And that's not no one's problem except yours because you didn't do what you were supposed to. There's many different avenues to get that done. Depending on your state regulation, doesn't mean that you have to follow your system. You may want to go somewhere else and pay for it. But whatever it takes to make sure that you get your hours in every 2 to 4 years. All right, when error occurs, I always tell my people to make sure that you're telling it, you're truthful about it. I'd rather tell the truth and get dinged later than not tell the truth and somebody find out about it. It becomes a problem. Okay. Driving to a scene, patients can be dropped there and lifted and moving. So eliminate as many errors as possible. All right, why am I doing this? Use cheat sheets, when you're doing high um, skill stuff. So such as RSI, there's a lot of cheat sheets out there. GCS scores, APGAR scores, um, the triangles, trauma triangles, trauma scores. So make sure, and if you do get in a jam, you don't know what to do, make sure you reach out to somebody that can help you out. All right. Information system allowing EMS providers to efficiently document emergency medical care that's been delivered. So, I have a degree in computer science, but I got a coding degree, and nobody codes anymore. We all have a lot of electronic systems out there that we can, do a lot of stuff in. We can look up PD dosages and calculations on our phone. We can map ourselves going to a call on our phone. Our PCR 9 out of 10 times is done on a electronic format. So, we can use our heart monitors now and punch in real time procedures that are being done, vital signs are given to us real time, and their time stamps for, usage while we're trying to do our PCR. So, finance funding system allow EMS departments continue to provide care. So there's many different combinations of paid volunteers still out there. So be mindful of that as you're going through your career. Taxation, fees for service, paid subscriptions, donations, federal, state, local grants, fundraiser. All these are ways that people can get money. We don't like the taxation part because people don't like for their taxes to go up. Sometimes it's needed if they want appropriate care in their area. Fees for service is what a lot of departments and agencies use. Some people have a paid subscription, even though I think that's going to the wayside now. There was some federal regulation on that. Some people donate, especially to volunteer agencies, to help keep those local doors open. Lots of grants out there, and fundraisers are sometimes used locally. So HIPAA is still out there obtaining written permission from the patients. Make sure you get those signed correctly so that you can, release that information in a timely effort to get, monetary compensation for what you've done. Educational systems are still out there. They're still ever evolving, ever changing. We have to adhere to most national standards established by accrediting organizations such as COEMPs. So that accreditation is then through KHEP. KHEP is the Commission of Accreditations of Allied Health Educational Programs. So that's your national standards that everybody usually tries to obtain. All right, ALS level instructors and directors must hold a 4-year degree. This is still involving in the state of North Carolina. Training is held at collegiate or university career centers or hospitals, and that's usually just regulated by them. You can still have classrooms out, in different areas, local fire departments, stuff like that. It must be approved by the state and have their own medical director, and a certain number of hours content approved for AEMTs must be completed each year. So public health examines the health needs of entire populations and the goal of preventing health problems. EMS works with public health agencies on 2 strategies: primary prevention, and which focuses on the strategies that will prevent the event from ever happening, such as vaccinations. And then secondary prevention is since it's already occurred, how can we help it prevent it from happening in the future? So helmet, seatbelt, car seats, different things like that. Okay. Ongoing research provides for a scientific basis for standards. EMS research may be performed by EMS providers or other people who are studying a particular branch of medicine, and important for EMS providers to stay up to date to the latest advancements in medicine. So, medicine is ever changing as we hear things and see things. We've gone through drug shortages, so we've had to go back to some of the old school medicines that were available to us. We've had to alter some of our medications, due to shortages. But this has all led to making sure that we stay up to date with everything. All right, transport for specialty facilities such as trauma, specific types of patients such as children pediatric facilities, burn facilities. Depending on your patient, they really do need to go to the most appropriate facility. Understanding what each hospital can and cannot do, what services, specialty services they provide. It's going to be it can be overwhelming because it seems like it's ever changing at times. But it's something that we have to keep up with so that we make sure our patients get the most appropriate care quickly. So, your transport time may be longer. You may have to maintain that patient for longer. But that's part of being a provider out in the streets, is to make sure that we can do this and get these people to the most appropriate facility. Facility transports between hospital, skilled nurse facilities, from a facility to a residence. They're still out there. AEMTs, advanced EMTs do a lot of this. So just being familiar with that and what you need and don't need as far as patient care documentation, but don't think that this doesn't follow the patient, throughout. Hospital staff, being familiar with them, what they can and can't do, who you can release your patient to. You may consult with medical staff over the radio. So making sure that you understand what each person can and cannot do is the big thing here, so that you don't release your care to a lower level provider. And also making sure that you got rapport with those care providers also, so that the patient feels comfortable and doesn't see some tension created there, which may lead to tension within them. Public safety agencies may have some EMS trained personnel on scene there too. So become familiar with them. Some of the plants around here in Blaine County have EMS and EMTs on site, and even paramedics. So making sure that you understand what they can and can't do. Okay, here's some roles responsibilities of advanced EMTs and professional attributes that we need to sustain throughout our whole career. And then making sure we look professional at all times. Okay. And this does provide a sense of calmness to the patient, whenever you show up at their house. So please make sure that your hygiene's correct, your clothes are and your uniforms, up to par with your agency. I know it gets hot here in the summer, and some of us resort back to t-shirts, because these button-up shirts can become a little too much at times. But just making sure that those t-shirts are clean and pressed, and they don't look like they just come out of a dryer somewhere. All right, y'all, that's the end of chapter 1.